Hello and welcome to the SQ Factor. I'm Camille Babin. Today I want to talk to you about Rich Dad Poor Dad. Simple. And if you have not read this book, I will say read it, but listen to what I'm going to share. And then when you read it, it will be different. And if you've already read it, then great. You already know what I'm talking about. And I don't like to have any regret. I really do my best to not have any regret. But if there is really one thing that I regretted, is to not have read this book long time ago because I had the ability to. That's the thing. It's not just because, the book was out there and I didn't read it, but it's because I actually purchased the book in 2008. I started a couple of pages and for some reason I didn't finish. I didn't read more than those first 3, 4 pages. And when I picked up the book way later, more than 10 years later, I felt so bad that I didn't read the book at the time I purchased it because had I read the book, I know my life would have been different. But I also know that all things work together, right, for the good of those who love God. So as a child of God, I do understand that God does everything beautifully in His timing. So I'm thankful for it. But anyway, that's not why we're here. Today, I want to share really the book and give credit first where credit is due because I believe Robert Kiyosaki has done an an incredible job really showing us some key elements, key factors, key differences, key principles that we can learn and apply and even like reflect, right, and see why some of us are, experiencing certain things and not others and all these different things. But there is one thing that I really want to highlight. Although I really love the book and I really love actually Robert Kiyosaki writing, I'm not going to lie, I love his books. I've read so many of them and they are very amazing. I believe he's a great teacher. However, if there is one thing that we don't really say, especially in the faith community, is that yes, Robert Kiyosaki truly diagnosed a real problem, right? He pointed us to key principles, like I said. However, I believe the map is incomplete for us believers. And if you're a follower of Jesus and you're running your business or just living your life, working your, like your job, you have access to that one. You have access to the complete map. And that's really what we're talking about. We're not just rehashing the book, but I just want to offer a different perspective from it that we can really align ourselves with the ways of God, the ways of the kingdom, which is really what we do, right? So let me just start first with what I know to be true when it comes to the things that Kiyosaki already highlighted and pointed to us. And he did a phenomenal job by exposing the lie or even the reality of the employee mindset. And I know we don't want to think about it, right? There's nothing wrong per se about, like being employed or working, but it is not talking about having a job just for the sake of having a job. It's talking about the mindset because most of us have been raised and trained with the idea that you go to school, you get good grades, you find a safe job, and you work for 40 years or even, for your entire life, and you retire with security, with all the benefits and all of that. So basically, he called that and he named this as a system that is designed to make you dependent but not free, right? He said that's trading time for money, and there is really no exit from that. And for millions of people, that's the reality. And I'm sure for you, for me, we've been there, even if perhaps it's not our reality anymore. We've been there. And I want to already say, even if that's your reality right now, we're not here to judge or to condemn. We're just here to highlight and really to share the truth about what is God speaking to us right now, right? Remember, it's the SQ factor. So we want to bring it through the lens of spiritual intelligence, through the lens of the word of God and the wisdom of God. So Kiyosaki also did another brilliant thing, and he revealed the power of assets over income. And he said that rich people don't work for money and money works for them. And they really work, design their work and everything they do to produce assets that will generate cash flow because it does understand, it really understands that liabilities drain us. And basically, that's where we are, when we don't understand those principles, we don't realize that we actually work for money. And we use our money to acquire, not even acquire, but to get a lot of liabilities everything we do is just getting a bigger house, getting a nicer car, and I'm not saying those things are inherently wrong, they're not. But it says the way we use the money to get those things is wrong, right? Because you work, you spend your money on all those things that don't bring anything, and then you have to go back again and you have to start the entire cycle again to do the same thing. And it's really things that don't even produce anything for you, and they things to just impress people, like they said, who don't even like you. So basically it's really reframing that perspective from the lens even of his rich dad perspective, and showing us, what we could do differently. There is also another thing that he highlights, and he highlights leverage. And I know that word should get tossed a lot, like tossed around a lot. OPM and OPT, that's other people money or other people's time, right? And he's talking about systems that work while you sleep. So basically, it's like a multiplication principle, right? That is applied to business. And I want to already say all these things are real and they work, right? So it's not about whether, what is said that is wrong or whatever. But what I want to share today is that those principles, we need to look at them or reframe them through the lens of God's perspective, right? We want to approach them from a spiritual dimension, but more importantly, from a biblical perspective and dimension. So I would say, although I really love this book, but it's still a shadow, right? Doesn't have the substance that we as believers need. And I'm sure if you are like me, I read these things, and although I truly agree and I learned so much from it, and I really made some changes in my life because of it, but I also realized that there are some parts sometimes you read and you're like, yes, okay, I get it. I get the OPM, I get the OPT, but there is still something in my heart that still doesn't feel right, right? And for me personally, I've asked the Lord and I said, Lord, there must be something different. There must be something, I don't know, but there is something, like you hear something and it's good, but it kind of conflicts a little bit with your values, right? With your faith. For us as people of faith, it's like, I know it's good advice. It sounds right in my head, but there is something in my heart. And I'm not talking about us resisting truth or resisting, sometimes you're just resisting something that is new because you're comfortable, and change can be uncomfortable and sometimes difficult. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about where God, even you feel like God Himself allows you to embrace the reality and the principle, but then it's like it's living, there is like a caveat, it's living or creating a small, like your spirit is not settled, right? You feel like there's something, but anyway, you get what I'm saying. But let me just go further so you will understand exactly where I believe the Kiyosaki map runs out, because although I know I said his framework is really brilliant for building wealth, but I think what missing, and the biggest thing, which is the most important thing for us as believers, is that it's almost silent. Not almost, it's completely silent on what wealth, true wealth is for. Right? So I want you to read, even if you've read it again before, I want you to read it again and read it with fresh eyes now and ask yourself, what is the destination? Because I know in the book it talks about financial freedom, time freedom, escape from the rat race, living on your terms, and building an empire and all of that. And those are not bad things, but they're not mission driven. They're not purpose driven. They're not kingdom, I should say, driven. They are not a calling. They're not an answer to the question, the fundamental question that all of us are already asking ourselves or need to ask ourselves. Why did God put me here? Like, I understand, I get it. I get financial freedom. I'm all for it. That's really what I do, right? Time freedom, escaping the rat race. We understand all of those things, but it still doesn't address the question, why did God put me here? And if we don't have that, which is really the gap that I see in secular financial frameworks, even the best ones, they can tell you how to build, but they cannot tell you what to build for or who to build with. They can teach you assets and liabilities, but they truly cannot teach you what to do when your asset is making you miserable, right? They can talk to you or address and show you all the power of leverage, but they cannot teach you what to do when the system that you're leveraging is actually built on values that conflict with your own values. and they can definitely teach you on residual income, but they cannot teach you how to sleep at night when that residual income come at the cost of your integrity. And that's what I keep seeing, like faith field, especially, believers, people that just hit a wall and they cannot explain, because the thing is, you do everything right on paper, but still something feel wrong. Like I was telling you, you still feel like, okay, the strategy seems to be right, because it might not be a strategy problem, but it's like inside there is something that doesn't align, and it doesn't matter how good the framework is, it cannot solve that spiritual issue, because it is a spiritual one. It is a matter of aligning with God's will and God's wisdom. And sometimes those strategies don't necessarily train you to discern God's voice, to discern God's will, and to really follow His instruction. We just go by what seems right. We just go by what has multiplied or what has produced results for others, but we don't really go by the pattern and the unique design and intent that God has for us. So that's what I want to show you, like the kingdom perspective, even on assets and liabilities, because Robert Kiyosaki says, acquire assets, eliminate liabilities. And this is true, right? We do understand, but I want to show you first that we need to understand when it says assets is really talking about all class of assets, asset class, things that you can get, whether, it's like real estate is really big on real estate. It talks about commodities, it talks about precious metals, right? Like gold and silver and all of that. And, please do that, right? Acquire those things. It talks about businesses and all these different things, but the problem is we don't start with the most important asset. We don't understand that the greatest asset is not on your balance sheet at all. The anointing of God on your life is an asset. The discernment that God gives you is an asset. Your relationship with God and your covenant relationships and God ordained relationships are an asset. Your integrity is an asset, and it's actually an asset that compounds and pays dividends in ways that no financial statement can even capture. All these things that are shared, no financial statement can capture. And I believe that's why they don't talk about it, because they don't see it. But the thing is, without those things, every other thing that you acquire is really void, and it has no value, at least not for us, right? Kingdom, purpose driven individuals. So that's really what I want you to think about as you think about acquiring assets. Don't eliminate, those, or don't start. Let us not start from the bottom, because I do believe, yes, in real estate, in gold and silver and businesses, and all these different things, and the list is even longer when it comes to real estate, I mean, to assets. But let's not start there. Let's start with the things that matter in the light of eternity, in the light, in God's views. That's really what is important, first of all. And now let's talk about liabilities. Your greatest liability is not your mortgage. I know for some of us, that might be crazy. Like, really? Yeah, it's not your mortgage. I know when, we talk, and, for me, let me just share this story real quick. For me, I really thought that. I really thought that, because at some point, I got tired and I was telling my husband, I hate being in debt. I hate having these debts. And, the thing I look at is like the mortgage, right? Let's get rid of it. I don't want any mortgage. Let's sell the house. We don't want anything. I don't want any mortgage. So we really thought about selling our house. And we're like, we just don't want any mortgage. We out. We don't want it. It was like, I felt like I had to get rid of leprosy or something. I don't know. It was like that to me. I felt that burden, like I don't want it anymore. And the Lord had to walk us through that process, retrain our mind and make us realize, I'm not saying that, mortgage is good or mortgage is bad or anything like that. I'm talking about everything that robs your peace. We just have to check that, right? But the Lord has to realign us and say, it's not really the mortgage right now. Like, don't look at your house like it's a liability. Change the way you see it, because there is another way. Anyway, I'll share that testimony another day, but I just want to say that the Lord had to walk us through even that season of our life where we had to understand what our greatest liability was. And yes, the mortgage is a liability, and a big one, but not the greatest. He said the greatest liability we have is misalignment. It's building something that God didn't commission, that God did not authorize, That's the liability really that cost us everything. It cost our peace, it cost our health, our family sometimes, and definitely our legacy, right? And it may look like success from the outside, but we know already that it eats us from the inside. And Joseph, I love to talk about Joseph. Joseph really got all of that. I actually want next week, I think we will talk about, Joseph and positioning him even in that quadrant that Kiyosaki talks about. I guess we'll kind of go with the Kiyosaki series. Why not? We already start talking about it. We might as well continue, right? But I want to highlight this quick before we come back to Joseph next week. But Joseph really understood this principle. And even when he was in Potiphar's house or in the prison, and then later as the commander, the governor of the nation, but in every place, everywhere he went, he still produced, right? Why? Because Joseph carried something that no organizational chart could create. He had the favor of God, and he was aligned with his assignment. And that's really what Rich Dad and Poor Dad and all these great financial books and systems and frameworks, uh, they can be great, but they still don't address that. They don't provide that. There is no room for it. There's no box for it. So the next thing I want to talk to you real quick before we wrap up is leverage. Kiyosaki says use other people's time, money, the systems and all of that. But God really wants us to understand the difference between leverage that multiplies your assignment and leverage that multiplies your ambition, right? Because both will scale for sure, but only one will remain, only one will stand. And I think that's where I was telling you how, there's something like I felt like there was a check in my spirit. Like, yes, I get the OPT, I get the OPM. Yes, it looks great. But in my heart, I felt like I don't really know. I know to some extent, but I don't like the idea of using or abusing or taking advantage of people, right? And I'm like, that's not God's way. So I can't really wrap my mind around it. So I think that's really the difference, where understanding that yes, multiplication is a principle from God. We see that in the dominion mandate. We see that from Genesis 1. But how do we leverage? That's where we need to use insight. That's where we need to ask the Lord, how. And again, making sure that is it leverage that, like I said, multiply your assignment, or does it multiply your ambition? Just what you acquire for you personally or even for your family, or is it something that is kingdom driven and kingdom focused? Because we can take the example of even the Tower of Babel and see how, like that's a clear example, right, of what they did there. But I don't want to go, into it. I want to keep, moving. I just want us to understand. And even I'll give you this question that you can really ponder on and, use that for this section. Ask always, ask the Lord, how do I multiply what you've given me? Just don't embrace leverage fully the way, like leverage is powerful, but we want to ask the right questions. How do I leverage? How do I multiply this? Is this even worth multiplying? Because the thing is, not everything is worth multiplying. We have to understand that, right? Is this what I was designed and called and commissioned to build? Does this serve the kingdom or just my net worth? That's the real question that we need to ask. And the last thing that I want to address, I know I, really given you a mouthful, but it's important. Financial freedom. Robert Kiyosaki talked about freedom, right? He said the ultimate goal is really freedom from the need to work, where we have passive income that exceeds our expenses, so we can truly exit the rat race. But the kingdom, God's perspective is a bit different, right? Because we don't really see freedom like just a destination. Freedom is actually a requirement or a prerequisite or a condition for the real destination. God doesn't free us so we can retire, right? It frees us so we can build, so we can serve, so we can establish His kingdom in the earth. We see even in Galatians 5, He said, it's for freedom that Christ set us free. So let's not be entangled into the yoke of bondage. And we see when God was talking to Moses in Exodus, and He charged Moses to go to Pharaoh and to tell him, let my people go, right? We love to say that. I love to say that. But we say, let my people go, but it's not complete. He said, let my people go so that they may worship me, right? Let my people go so they can serve me. That is the ultimate goal. The freedom that Christ obtained for us is not just so we can never work again. It's just not so we can retire and live happily ever after on a, beach somewhere. I don't think God is against, us going to the beach or whatever. But when it comes to the kingdom, the matters of the kingdom, until God's will is established upon the earth, our job, our work is not finished. So that's really what we need to understand, that, Exodus was not the end of the story, it's the beginning. It was really bringing them out so that it could bring them into the place of fellowship and connection and communion with Him. So I want us to understand that, um, like in the kingdom context, financial freedom, like our provision, uh, basically it's like financial freedom means that our provision is secured enough for us to be able to pursue the assignment that God has given us without without money making our decisions. Last week, that's what I talked about. I talked about when your wallet is louder than the voice of God. That's really, it was idols don't always look evil. That was the title of what I shared last week, because it was that when we don't have that freedom, unfortunately, is really when money makes decisions on our behalf, when we have to consult our wallet, our bank accounts, before we can say yes to our assignment, before we can say yes to God, leading us into a specific action and into a specific direction. So that is really different from financial freedom as an end in itself. And it's for purpose, right? It really is that, because there is one that the world teaches is just having a comfortable exit, comfortable retirement, and you're good. But for the kingdom, or from through the lens of the kingdom, we understand that it's really for purpose. So let me just leave you with this, question, because I know I said a lot and I want to wrap it here. I want you to think about it. It's not something you have to answer right away. Take your time, think about it. Even read the book if you haven't read it, or read it again and see, something that might be new, because you probably now will read it differently. And I pray you do. And if you do have any question or comment, I would love to hear it, by the way. So the question is this: if your business or if your life continued exactly the way it is right now, but you never felt the sense of purpose that you're hungry for, will that be enough? So if your answer is yes, then, keep on. Keep on. That means it's good for you. If you like that framework, just go build some more, acquire some more, just leverage whatever you do, that's fine. But if your answer is no, then I really, and you feel like you said, I need to know, like there's more beyond my bank account. You feel that hunger for assignment, not just achievement or accomplishment, but assignment, purpose, alignment. And I want you to know that it's normal, and you are actually are called as a kingdom builder. And kingdom builders, we need more than financial framework. We also need spiritual intelligence. And that's why I will always talk about it, right? We need to know how to hear God in our decisions. We need to know how to navigate, how to maneuver. And spiritual intelligence is not just something that, relates to church or just reading the Bible and just, living life. No, it's really discerning the language of the spirit and apply that, especially in the areas where we feel like God doesn't belong in those spaces, especially in the area of finance, especially in the area of when we talk about economics, when we talk about business, and we feel like God doesn't belong in those space. So I really want you to understand, yes, we do have somehow of a map, a financial landscape, even through those the book that we already went through together. And yes, it's a good map. But, for us, it's not really something that we can truly use and truly apply all the way through. We can't, because it's like a map that kind of show you the fields, but it doesn't tell you why it matters, or it doesn't give you the real reason why it matters to you and for you, because it's different. The reasons why they run that play and they do that has nothing to do with the things that are important to you and the things that really will cause you to stay in alignment with God's will and in alignment with your values, with the things that you treasure deep down, because they can tell you where the resources are, but they don't tell you, who they meant to serve, right? It doesn't tell you, it may tell you how to build, but it doesn't really tell you how to stand before God and give an account for. So that's really the kingdom map. That's what we build, inside the Joseph School of Stewardship. And right now I'm so excited because I've launched specifically for women of faith the Fix My Piggy Bank. It comes, really from the book that I've written, Fix My Piggy Bank. And I realized the Lord was like, okay, I know you see bigger, you want the banks and all of that things, you want to teach on that, you want to help, you want to, train on how to really build financial systems and structures, that are designed for generational wealth, kingdom impact. But before you get there, there are holes, there are gaps that needs to be addressed, that needs to be fixed. And that's why the community, we really go deep into that. We deal with all aspects. It's very holistic. We do the things of the spirit, understanding the spiritual influences around our money. We also work a lot on mindset and all of that, because we do understand that we have to renew our mind, right? And lastly, we now do the strategies, the practical ways to pay off debt, in a way that doesn't drain you, in a way that doesn't deprive you from the things that you call to build. How do you multiply? How do you apply that leverage without compromising your values? All those things, really do that, making sure that we build for true legacy. We don't think it's just leaving money to our kids, but we go like really about what legacy really means. What kind of legacy are we leaving to our children? All these different things. I'm so excited because it's something that the Lord has put on my heart. And I just want to invite you, really to join us. I'll leave the link in the show notes so you can just take a look and see if it's something that you feel like it's for you, it's for this season. I would really love for you to invite, to join us. And if it's not for you, but you know someone that it may be for in this moment, I would love for you to share it with them, invite them, because that's really the work that we do. I want to leave you with this scripture in Proverbs 10:22. It really is one of my favorites. It's the blessing of the Lord that makes us rich, and he has no sorrow with it. And we know that word sorrow in Hebrew is the word etsev, and it means toil, it means pain. It's the grief, the inner grief of building in the wrong direction. So I really want us to understand that God's version of wealth building is not just to be more profitable, but there is more peace. It brings peace to it. It produces, there is result without the internal cost. It grows without our soul being compromised or eroded. I want you to understand that, and it really is available to every single one of us. So I've said enough. If this episode really resonated with you, I want to invite you again. Like I said, take a step, join us in the Fix My Piggy Bank community, or even inquire more about the Joseph School of Stewardship, because this is the first layer of the Joseph School of Stewardship. We'll go deeper, but there is work that we need to do first. And I think this is kind of dismantling the wrong belief and the wrong systems that we've been operating under. That yes, you may have results, but you know that the results are just financial, material, or external, but there is no real results tangible, like within. There is nothing. Your soul is still empty, your soul is still void, you're still longing for more. That is your invitation. So I will just, leave you with that, and the link is in the show notes, and I will talk to you. I will see you next week.